On Saturday, this gets very real. SNAP benefits will stop flowing to all those who need it.
Republicans are on a crusade to kill SNAP.
The Democrats just don't know what they're doing. I don't know what's wrong with them.
Pressure is mounting on Senate Democrats to open the government this week as food assistance for needy families is running out. But the blue team is banking on sticker shock from the insurance enrollment period that began Saturday, that will force Republicans to the table. Senator Shelley Moore Capito, part of the Republican leadership team, joins us. When does she think what may soon be the longest shutdown in history come to a close? And what will the GOP say to the president's new demands to eliminate the filibuster?
Maybe this idea that we have to pass this hurdle of the filibuster, maybe we need to make it 55.
No, I'm not on board with that. I think as much as I respect the president.
But Democrats think they have something else in their account, too. They're expecting big wins in key elections on Tuesday.
Hello, Virginia!
But not every Democrat is looking to go all in. California Congressman Bera is trying to find a way to make a deal Democrats may need to take back the House next year, even with an expected victory in the Golden State's gerrymandering counterstrike.
This is not about red versus blue. This is about red, white, and blue. These are about the fundamental principles of fair and free elections.
And we're making a little news of our own. Your first look at brand new polling from our partners at Decision Desk HQ, including the significant changes for President Trump and voters' views on the economy, because we're listening to you.
We've been all over the country for the last couple of weeks talking to Americans.
All this and our best in the business panel of journalists. The Hill Sunday starts now. Hello from Washington and welcome to the Hill Sunday. I'm Chris Stirewalt. Look, if you don't live in Virginia, New Jersey, California, New York City, or a handful of other jurisdictions around the country, you probably have wondered what's the deal with all of this election coverage. But I promise you there is a method to this madness. Tuesday's election day is obviously important to the more than 100 million people who live in those places, but it is important for the whole country too. This is the first report card for President Trump and his party since their big win 1 year ago, and it also sets the marker for the high-stakes midterm elections 1 year from now. See? We're going to get to see how Americans are feeling about the direction of things. Lucky for us, we have a brand new poll from our partners at Decision Desk HQ that we are very pleased to get to share with you for the very first time. So let's start with the top line number for the president. The president's approval rating sits at 41%. That's down 3 points from April, but it is certainly within sort of the normal range for Donald Trump. This is where he hangs out. But this number should be concerning for Republicans. It's not surprising that Democrats don't like him or that Republicans like him. But 29% is bad news with independents. Those folks are the majority makers. So what do we think the problem might be? When you look through this poll, you're going to see a lot of concern about the economy from voters, but this one really caught our attention. Asked if they feel better or worse off financially than a year ago when Republicans had their big win, less than a quarter of voters say they're better off now. And a lot of people, different groups, are feeling worse off. That includes almost half of independents and Hispanic voters. Remember, the Republican theory of 2024 was that their gains among non-white and typically Democratic-leaning constituencies was largely driven by economic frustrations, particularly inflation. So this should all add up to good news for Democrats. I don't know about that. Let's see. Okay, if the election were held today, Democrats would hold just a 1-point advantage over Republicans. That's down 4 points from April. So it's all going one way for that. And then on this, the Republicans actually closed the gap. If that number is predictive, it would definitely mean that Republicans would hold the House. Democrats have to win in the national popular vote for the House by 3 or more, really, points because of the nature of House districts, okay? All right? But we do have an election this Tuesday, which we will have fully covered for you with all the results right here on NewsNation. And our friends at the Decision Desk, they're going to help us call all the big races. Our special coverage begins at 7 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday night, and we're going to stick with you through the evening. I will be there. Okay? With us now from West Virginia, West by God, Virginia, Shelley Moore Capito, the #4 Republican in the U.S. Senate, and she's part of the team that's trying to make a deal to end this shutdown. Senator, we're starting to see a little movement. There are bipartisan talks about finishing this fiscal year's spending bills and a possible deal on Obamacare subsidies that Democrats want in exchange for reopening the government. How close, from where you sit, are we to ending this shutdown?
Well, I think, you know what, ironically, we've been close for five weeks in that we only need 5 Democrats to sort of come to their senses and say, yes, reopen the government, and then we can begin to negotiate. But setting that aside, which is very frustrating of the 13 times we voted on this, I think that with SNAP benefits expiring, I think the other side is looking at themselves and realizing there's 40 million families and people across the nation that are really feeling that, along with the stoppages that you see at the airports and other things. This isn't a political game anymore. This is hurting people, and we need to reopen government. And then all of these negotiations, I'm particularly excited about the possibility of moving our appropriations bills through, so then we can appropriate to the Trump budget. We can say what we want to do, and I think that opens up a lot of possibilities, I think, for us to assert our spending authority like we should.
Okay. Yes, and on the question of these COVID-era Obamacare subsidies that are set to expire, we're also seeing some movement there. Your Republican colleague from North Carolina, Tom Tillis, called for a 2-year expansion, or said he might be able to do a 2-year extension. I understand not wanting to negotiate until the shutdown is over, but are you in principle open to some kind of time-limited extension for these subsidies?
Well, I think what we're going to see is we're now past the November 1st date. People have to sign up all the way, to January the 1st. And healthcare is very personal, Chris, as you know, to every single family. So this is important. This is 74,000 West Virginians who have the subsidies. The enhanced subsidies is the smaller subsidy that was put into effect basically by the Democrats in 2022 during COVID, meant to expire. But now people are beginning to rely on them, as we knew that probably would happen. I am open to looking at a way to reform this system, to move it forward, and to get past this logjam. So, yes, we've had many conversations, give and take. That's what we're supposed to be doing, but we're not going to get anywhere until we have the government open, as John Thunes said numerous times. Then we'll begin to vote on these things and solidify those negotiations.
All right, let's talk about the filibuster. The Majority Leader Thune has made it pretty clear that he is for the filibuster, remains for the filibuster. But when we go back to 2013 and Harry Reid, it has been a pretty consistent bipartisan erosion of the filibuster, including some rule changes sort of at the periphery this year. Even though Democrats are relying on the filibuster now, they historically have not been fans. What do you say to Republicans who argue that the blue team is going to end the filibuster whenever they return to power, so now is the right time to blow it up so that Republicans get the benefits?
Well, quite simply, we don't have the votes to do this. So we don't need to, I think, move forward with an internal fight as to whether to eliminate the filibuster. Personally, I think it preserves the rights of the minority. And so when we're in the minority again, which will happen at some point throughout history, we're not going to be able to assert our minority rights and prevent things like new states joining the union, packing the court, voter reform, abortion and gun issues that are very extreme. And so that, I think, is an important quality of the filibuster. I think also that we have so much more that we need to be focusing on. So I don't think that this will, I don't think we have the votes to pass it. And there are many like me who have signed a letter in 2017 saying we wouldn't do it. I don't intend to do that.
All right, you know me, I am diving into the crosstabs on our new poll from our partners at DDHQ, and I'm particularly interested in the numbers around the economy. Even a sizable number of Republicans say that they are feeling worse off economically, financially, than they were a year ago. Tariffs are definitely a part of what is driving prices up, and some Republicans joined a successful Senate vote to try to claw back some of the president's tariff power just this past week. Now, we know that's dead on arrival in the House, But on Wednesday, the Supreme Court is going to hear arguments on the president's tariff power. He may lose. If the president loses and comes to Congress for authorization, do you see yourself wanting to support him to keep the status quo or to restore the status quo on tariffs?
I think what the president is trying to do here is to advantage the American worker, which he feels, and I feel, have been disadvantaged because of unfair trade practices over decades. And so he was just in Asia. He struck deals with Malaysia, with Cambodia, I think on the table with Japan and Vietnam, had huge talks with the Chinese. I think all of this is going to lay to rest. I think where we're seeing the maybe hesitancy on the part of the voter is there's just a lot of uncertainty right now. The president is nailing these down practically daily. And I think once those do get nailed down, you'll see our agriculture products will be more advantaged. As you see the soybean sales over in China, you'll see other things like supply chains loosen up and have more reciprocal trade barriers, if any. And so I think actually by the time we get to the end of December, this is all going to be a shift. And then that will have time for our tax relief, no taxes on tips, no taxes on overtime, no tax on Social Security. All of these things will blend in with the small business tax advantages that we built in the One Big Beautiful Bill.
Okay, late last night, the Pentagon announced additional targeted killings of suspected drug smugglers in the Caribbean. The president has said that attacks on land-based targets, presumably inside Venezuela, are next. And he says he does not need congressional authorization for any of it. Democrats say they're not even getting briefings on these operations. Listen to what the ranking Democrat on Senate Intelligence Committee, Mark Warner, said.
Yesterday, the administration convened a briefing for Republican senators, and only Republican senators, on the recent U.S. military strikes in the Caribbean. That is not how the system is supposed to work. That is not how national security decisions are supposed to be made.
Okay, what do you say to Senator Warner's complaint, and where are you on the question of congressional authorization?
Well, West Virginia, as you know, has been highly affected by the drug trafficking and fentanyl that has just flooded into this country, and in particularly in my state, has very much cost many lives and a lot of sorrow all across the state. So I support the president taking out narco-terrorists in international waters, which he's doing with the intelligence that he has and that they are gathering as we speak. I do believe that both sides of the political spectrum, Republicans and Democrats, should get the identical briefings, should know, especially on the Intelligence Committee, what is actually going on. I hope that gets remedied this week, if in fact that's what's happened. And so I think, but I believe the president is protecting this country by taking out those that are trafficking fentanyl into this country and killing Americans.
Okay, America, if you were getting ready to fight traffic on Route 88 for Oglebay Park's Festival of Lights, you would know her already. But if you don't,
yes,
there she is, Senator Shelley Moore Capito. We thank you for your time. Okay, with us now from his district in Sacramento County, California, is Democratic Congressman Ami Bera. Congressman, a federal judge says the administration must release emergency funds for food assistance this week. But that, as we know, is a patch, not a fix. And other problems are stacking up, like slowdowns in air travel. Now, from where I sit, the shutdown has been over health insurance. Democrats wanted to bring attention to the rising cost of premiums and the end of these subsidies. The open enrollment period is here, and Republicans didn't make a deal before that started. You've definitely made your point. Democrats have definitely made your point. Is it time to reopen the government?
You know, I think it is. We did a telephone town hall the other night, and you could hear the anguish in people's voices. You know, food is very real. Shelter is very real. You're starting to see the air traffic controllers, the TSA agents, federal workers not getting paid and missing their first paycheck. So, yeah, let's come to the table. I think the Senate is pretty close to getting something done. And what I hear from my Republican colleagues in the House, I think a lot of them are ready to come back, vote on a longer-term CR, and then actually do an appropriations process.
Okay, now, what you heard from Senator Capito and what you're alluding to there is movement on this possible extension, maybe a year, maybe 2 years on the Obamacare subsidies. That is a lot less than what a lot of House Democrats were asking for at the start of this. How would you feel about accepting less to get the government reopened? Are you ready to deal?
I mean, I am. If we could do a 2-year extension, we probably are going to have to put some caps on income levels. But for the most part, these subsidies go to working class, middle class individuals and keep healthcare costs down. And then I would urge us to come together. The healthcare system's not really working for anyone right now. It costs way too much, and people have trouble getting access. Let's actually go through the committee process, think about what reforms we could make to get a healthcare system that the American people deserve.
Okay, you're on the House Intelligence Committee. We heard Senator Warner talk about Democrats being excluded from the briefings, and we heard Senator Capito just now say that she thinks Democrats ought to be included. Are you getting briefings on House Intel? And do you think, I assume, that the president needs congressional approval to carry out these strikes?
I am not getting these briefings. I'm not sure Republican House members on the Intel Committee are also getting the briefings. I was in Washington, D.C. this last week trying to get information on what the imminent threat from Venezuela is. Again, we know that's not where cocaine and fentanyl come from. Those come up through Colombia on the Pacific coast. So if the president actually puts boots on the ground, that would be an illegal action. He needs to get congressional authorization unless he can come to Congress and tell us what the imminent threat to the American homeland is. And thus far, he's not done that, and I don't see that threat.
Okay. Tuesday, voters in California will decide on sort of a gerrymandering counterstrike against Texas. A new poll from our partners at DDHQ finds that nearly half of the country opposes these gerrymandering efforts. Democrats are very understandably tapping into those feelings to push these retaliatory gerrymanders across the country. But I have noticed that they are using some pretty hot language to do it. I've heard Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries and others talk about Donald Trump, quote, rigging the 2026 midterms. That is the same kind of talks that Democrats denounced when Republicans were doing it in 2020 because they said it undermined people's confidence in our democracy. If Republicans hold on to the House next year, will it be a rigged election?
You know, I think all things being equal, momentum should be on our side, and we should get the House of Representatives back. I do think the president is aggressively going to Republican governors, asking them to change the district boundaries. I agree with the public. This isn't the way our country should operate. You know, we should have independent commissions all across this country, take districting out of the hands of the politicians. But that is where we are right now. So California's fighting back. We'll see what happens. But hopefully one day we actually don't have mid-decade redistricting.
Okay, if the polls are right, there is going to be redistricting in California. That leaves you with a choice to make. Do you know, as things change, I know you have to wait until after the results are in. Are you leaning in terms of which district you think you're going to end up running in?
You know, we'll see. My district gets split in two. I'll make sure the majority of my district's in Sacramento County, and, you know, might be leaning a little bit more towards the 3rd district or the new 3rd district.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, we're making a little news with us, Congressman. We appreciate you. And America, if you were living your best life in YOLO, California, you would know him already. But if you don't, there he is, Congressman Ami Bera. We thank you. Okay, coming up, how is the country feeling about Trump 2.0? We're getting ready to find out on Tuesday. We'll talk to the Republican candidate for lieutenant governor in the big prize of Virginia when the Hill Sunday returns. Welcome back. In just 2 days, millions of Americans will be casting their ballots in big elections across the country, and a lot of the attention falls on Virginia. So with us now from the Old Dominion is a Republican candidate for Lieutenant Governor John Reid. And I want to tell viewers, they should know we had arranged with Virginia's Democratic House Speaker to also be with us today, but he had a change of plans. Good news for you, Mr. Reid. The time is all yours. Take a look at the polling average in your race. Your deficit is just 2.4 points. That's not a very big deficit. And when we compare that to our DDHQ average in the gubernatorial race, you are doing a lot better than the Republican at the top of the ticket, Winsome Earl Sears. How do you explain that difference?
Oh, listen, I think people are just beginning to pay attention to the race, to the polls. They're beginning to pull focus on the key issues, the economic and cultural, that are, on the ballot here. It's not just about personalities. It really is what direction the state wants to go. And, in these last few days, a lot of people will be deciding to go on Tuesday, and I think they're going to ultimately decide to vote Republican from the top of the ticket all the way to dog catcher.
Okay, so does Virginia have dog catchers anymore? I don't know. All right, so when we look at the numbers, what we see underneath is there's a ton more undecided voters in your race than there are in the gubernatorial race. So you need to make an argument to a bunch of independents and even some Democrats who may be considering splitting their ticket this year. Doesn't happen very often, but this may be a year with more ticket splitting than usual in Virginia. When you go to those independents and you go to even some of those Democrats, what's the argument you make in your race?
Well, the first thing is that I have traveled over 100,000 miles across the state while my Democrat opponent has stayed in her house. I agreed to 10 debates. She is the only person running statewide who's done none. She refuses to do any debates. So I actually had to have the world's first artificial intelligence debate just so I could get in front of the public and explain myself. It was crazy. Now, I still was very fair to her. I made sure that the producer and the AI folks who put it together, I said, don't turn this into some sort of skit or take her worst comments and try to, put that to the public. Let's give her a fair shake here, too. So I hope people will look that up. I think they'll see that I'm a fair-minded guy. I'm also the business person here who's lived all over the world and done business in a global affairs firm as a partner. I mean, if you want to talk about who's going to bring business to Virginia and who's going to make wise decisions about the economy, is it the business guy or is it the angry poetry professor from the local community college who wound up in the state Senate, who keeps pushing the progressive agenda? I think they're going with me.
Okay, but did you win? Did you beat the AI? Who won? Did the AI beat you in the debate, or did you beat the AI?
Well, my mother thought that I certainly beat the AI, so I'll leave it to the public. I felt like I did a pretty good job with no rehearsal and no second takes or anything. She at least, they just used her quotes, so I thought it was pretty good.
Okay, Virginia, we know, is heavily affected by the government shutdown. A lot of people are concerned about the economy and the cost of living. Governor Youngkin is tapping into emergency funds to cover food assistance in Virginia. But President Trump, certainly before the court decision, fought to withhold the use of emergency funds to sort of heighten the pressure on Democrats to vote to reopen the government. Which one of them has the right approach here, Governor Youngkin or President Trump?
Oh, well, I don't think it's an either or. I'm tired of anybody using a crisis, an artificial crisis, to try to manipulate the polls. And I do think, we were taking a bet last night after we did a whole bunch of events, like what day are the Democrats going to reopen the government? What day are they going to try to solve these problems that they've artificially created after the election? Will it be November 5th, November 6th, November 7th? I mean, I think a lot of Americans are really frustrated that the political class, both at the state capitol in Richmond, led by Democrats in the House and the Senate, and the political class in Washington, really doesn't care about the average citizen. So they use these artificial deadlines as leverage to do political work while the average American is suffering. I shook hands with probably 600 people waiting in line to vote in my home county of Henrico yesterday, and that's about 2 hours south of Washington. Some of them are federal employees who were really frustrated, and I told them, I'm the Republican who is going to stand up for you. We've got to stop this, and it begins by putting people in office who actually want to do the people's work instead of play political games. I'm not a politician. I wasn't in the House of Delegates or the state Senate. The people up in D.C. have withheld funding from me. I don't know why, but you know what? That's great, because if I win, I don't owe anybody anything. I can make the right decisions without playing those political games, and I think independents are going to like hearing that.
Okay. America, if you had ever seen the stars in Galax, Virginia, you would know him already, but if you don't, there he is, John Reid, running for lieutenant governor in the Old Dominion. We thank you. Election day is less than 48 hours away, so you know what that means. News Nation's Brian Enton is back on the road, crisscrossing the country to get a sense of how you, America, how you all are feeling ahead of Tuesday. Brian, what do you know?
Hey, Chris. Yeah, we're in the NewsNation RV. We made a rule, no politicians allowed in the RV, only regular American people. We're almost to Cleveland, Ohio. We've been all over the country. We're in Philly, which is super interesting, not getting a lot of coverage, but there's a big DA race there. There's a former judge running against the longtime progressive DA. We were talking to soybean farmers out in Tennessee and Kentucky who are obviously very happy with President Trump and that deal with China. And then New Jersey, we visited with women that we actually talked to during the presidential election, the big governor's race there. Even some Democrat women not happy with the Republican candidate, not happy with electricity prices. That's one thing that came up over and over again. Some of these green deals they feel like have really affected their pocketbooks. Chris?
Brian, you are going to be part of the party on Tuesday, where we're going to have awesome election coverage all night long with these fine folks you see right there. We start at 7 p.m. Eastern, and we will be with you until we know what is going on. Our best in the business panel is waiting for us on the other side. Stick around. Welcome back. Yay. We are joined by our best in the business panel of journalists. Say hello to Bill Salmon. He's Senior Vice President of Editorial for News Nation and The Hill. That makes him my boss, so we're going to be really nice to Mr. Salmon. Robert Draper, he's a staff writer for the New York Times and a great author. Jessica Taylor, who is here on exactly the right week. She is the U.S. Senate and Governor's editor for the Cook Political Report with Amy Walter. Mr. Salmon, we start with you. I noted two things happened at the same time. We got the estimate for how much health insurance was going to cost next year, which is a lot of money. $27,000 on average for a family plan. And we also got the new numbers on the deficit. And we had added $1 trillion to the deficit faster than any time outside of the pandemic, $38 trillion. I heard Shelley Capito, and we've heard Republicans increasingly say, we're going to have to extend these subsidies for Obamacare. At some point, the more money's got to go out. Both of these things feel unsustainable. And people, being honest in both parties, probably have to acknowledge that both of these things are unsustainable. But there's no way, right, that we get to a place where Congress is like, let's get serious about the debt and about what's wrong with our health insurance system.
I was going to say the last thing that people are thinking about when they talk about whether to come to the table over ending this government shutdown is, what's it going to do to the national debt? I mean, we went through another $1 trillion in 82 days, okay? I'm old enough to have remembered, you know, at the beginning of this century, we were at 5 or 6 trillion in debt. We're at 38 trillion now. The truth is, the two parties don't care. Okay, and the last guy at the bar that gets caught with the tab when it comes in is going to have to pay it. But other than that, they're going to keep running up the debt.
Robert, I have hypocrisy is a tribute that vice pays to virtue, and I am all for it. I'm pro-hypocrisy on such matters as the filibuster, right? So I listened to Democrats, and we talked with the senator about, you can go back to 2013 and Harry Reid and starts nuking things, and Democrats say, we got to get rid of the filibuster, and here they are hanging on by their fingernails to the edge of the filibuster to have the shutdown keep going. I'm if I am pro-hypocrisy, do you think Democrats walk away from this experience feeling differently about the filibuster, or will they get mind erased and come back and love to hate the filibuster again?
The latter, of course. I mean, the question answers itself, right? I mean, we have been seeing, you know, a kind of chiseling away of a number of institutions, but, you know, I think that this is not just a generational problem, but an educational one. I think that a lot of people who are seeking office now don't really recognize that one of the distinguishing features of the Senate is that it is deliberative, and what distinguishes it from the House is a filibuster that really forces people to come to the table, but you're seeing now in both parties a chipping away at that recognition, and so I think you know, if the filibuster lasts for very long, it will be in such a denuded, punctured form that it will cease to be recognizable.
Speaking, Jessica, of denuded and punctured, here is the generic ballot for Democrats from our new DDHQ poll, and that really surprised me. I went through all the numbers. I looked at these terrible numbers on the economy, people feeling worse about their own finances. The president's numbers are worse than they were in April, all of this stuff. And then you sort of turn the page looking to say, well, Democrats must be looking good for 26. No, if that was predictive, they would lose. Now, there's still substantial undecided. If you talk to some Democrats, they're going to say the shutdown's given us our mojo back. We're feeling good now, and we're back, da-da-da-da-da. Coming out of this shutdown, if we ever do, coming out of this shutdown, do you think that simpler question, how do we explain what's going on the generic ballot number?
Well, I think it's the difference to me, what it feels like having covered 2018 and Trump's first midterm, is that Democrats are not unified in a message, and they are not a unified party. I think being anti-Trump is no longer just enough, that you have to have a reason for people to vote for you, and that's certainly what, as I look at the Senate map, for instance, which the Senate is a much, much harder climb, of course, than the House of Representatives, that this poll better indicates. But, there's a push and pull between establishment candidates like, Janet Mills in Maine, then your Graham Plattner, who there's been a host of all oppo dropped against him, but that's not really dimming his mojo in Maine, because people want a fighter. And I think there is the Democratic base that is looking for sort of their type of Trump that can sort of inspire and rally with a populist message. And
that's what's going to play out in primaries starting at the beginning of next year, which is you'll have progressives say we need to go radical, and you'll have the Janet Mills or the Roy Coopers in North Carolina say no, we got to be cool, so that we'll get to watch that play out. Bill Salmon, Republicans said a year ago, Republicans said that the Democratic Party was shot through with anti-Semitism and were full of rotten Jew hatred, and that Elise Stefanik, for example, made a national profile out of going after anti-Semitism on the left. And so the old and busted point of view is it is a left problem. The new hotness is it's everywhere, that anti-Semitism exists on both the left and the right. The head of the Heritage Foundation has walked back a statement that he made about the enthusiastically anti-Semitic, super misogynistic Nick Fuentes. Take a listen.
Always defend America, and we will always defend our friends against the slander of bad actors who serve someone else's agenda. That includes Tucker Carlson, who remains, and as I have said before, always will be a close friend of the Heritage Foundation.
So Robert says that he was using nuance, and that the nuance that he offered in that statement was missed on his audience. But we hear people like Mark Levin, Dinesh D'Souza, loud voices who are real big-time MAGA, saying the anti-Semitism and racism and this stuff on the right is out of control.
Well, look, it's rising on both sides. Having said that, I will point out that the biggest split within the Republican Party between the traditional Republicans, the George W. Bush Republicans, and the MAGA crowd, both of those groups are very pro-Israel. Okay, there's no disagreement there. In fact, Trump is arguably the most pro-Israel president in history. So what you're talking about is sort of an argument between the fringe on the right and the ultra fringe on the right, in my opinion. It's gotten a lot of oxygen, and it's anti-Semitism and bigotry should be condemned no matter where it is. But in the main, I don't think there's a lot of ordinary Republicans across the fruited plain sitting around thinking, well, Nick Fuentes, do I want to be as anti-Semitic? I think it's just sort of it's an argument within a think tank. No disrespect to think tanks. I know you're in a think tank, but I think it is a very niche argument that's getting a little more attention than it might deserve.
You know whose attention it has? It has J.D. Vance's attention. And J.D. Vance said he wasn't going to do any pearl clutching when the text came out from the young Republicans that made the Holocaust jokes and did all of that jazz. He has tried to straddle this and do it because he's trying to remain the right, it looks like he's trying to remain the rightmost option for Republican primary voters for 2028. How's he doing?
Well, he's trying to straddle, right? I mean, the Republican Party increasingly has a Nick Fuentes problem. I wrote about this in the New York Times in early September and interviewed Fuentes. And the reality is that a guy who has been rightly regarded as a fringe character is becoming increasingly less so. That not only has his following increased, but it's clear that that there is a conflation of his very pronouncedly anti-Semitic views with very Israel skeptic to anti-Israel views.
The lumping together.
Right, yes.
And we should also point out his effulgent misogyny. I think missed too often in this is, yes, there's anti-Semitism, but there's a lot.
The litany goes on.
There's a lot of gross candy at the bottom of that trick-or-treat bag. Okay, coming up, think you know what's going to happen on election night? Well, this lady on my left probably knows better than most of us how she expects things are going to go on Tuesday when the Hill Sunday returns.
A government shutdown can't stop the Hill. Trusted by millions, thehill.com is your window into D.C. with breaking news and exclusive content, helping you navigate the shutdown and its impact without the finger pointing. Trusted, credible, nonpartisan. Thehill.com.
Welcome back, and aren't you lucky because we are joined yet again, even still, by our best in the business panel of journalists to talk about one of my very favorite things, Election Day. Yay!
It's our Christmas.
I'm a huge nerd, and so are you, Jessica. Okay, give us this, start out with the 30,000-foot view. California, New York City, New Jersey, Virginia, what's the trend line? What are you expecting?
I think the Democrats are going to have a good night when you look at this overall, but I am looking at some of the more nuance. How much does Prop 50 pass by? And then, as you know, when I look at the Virginia and New Jersey races, is there still a world of ticket splitting? Because to me, the big outstanding thing is not whether Abigail Spanberger is going to win. She's heavily favored, but can she win by enough to pull the very damaged Jay Jones in the Attorney General's race across the finish line? It's been since 2005 that we saw a split vote in these constitutional offices in Virginia. So how much do candidates still matter, and how much does sort of the wave matter? And then I'm looking at the margin in New Jersey. I mean, this was a place where Trump certainly closed compared to his 2016 and 2020 numbers. This is another state that likes to sort of alternate their gubernatorial candidates. So if Mikey Sherrill wins, that would sort of break that stretch in Trenton and different things. She's the one candidate where it's helped her that she's from Washington and not from Trenton. But I mean, I think where Republicans have gone wrong in both of these races, and Jonathan Martin has a very good column in Politico about this, is Trump doesn't give you permission to sort of break from him at all. Right. Winsome Sears has doubled down on, trans issues in schools, when at the time the big issue in Virginia is jobs and the economy and federal workers.
And the shutdown,
and the shutdown. And then, Jack Ciattarelli is someone that had a reputation apart from Trump after running before, but in the primary he had to be pushed to the right. And, in the debate, he said he gave Trump an A rating. I mean, in a state like New Jersey, that's
I don't even live in New Jersey, and I've seen the ads, right? Like, they are everywhere. But Ciattarelli, so if there is going to be a surprise,
it would be in New Jersey.
It seems like New Jersey. He's close, and if he has an overperformance in the polls like he did 4 years ago when he was running against Phil Murphy, he could pull it off there. Any other surprises that you're looking for?
I mean, again, I think it's the Attorney General's race in Virginia. There, how does that happen?
Which would be more surprising, that Jay Jones holds on and wins, or that he loses? Which would surprise you more?
It would still surprise me a little bit more if he loses, just because I expect Spanberger to have a pretty comfortable margin. And again, I think it's just that lack of ticket splitting. It's how many voters, Democratic voters, are worried enough about issues like abortion, gay marriage, different things, that they still would rather have a Democratic Attorney General.
Bill, you we have expectations of you on Tuesday, which is that you're going to help us call these races first. That is something that we want you to do for us with our partners at DDHQ.
No pressure.
Don't screw it up. But what do you expect?
Well, I agree. It's about the margins. Okay. Remember, we go into these. There's something like 10,000 races across the country, municipal, county, state. On Tuesday, we're focusing on 5, and in those 5, and rightly so, because they're the big important races. We all came into this thinking Democrats are probably going to win all of them, right? So if Democrats win all of them, it's hard to make too much of that when you're extrapolating towards the midterms. But if you look at the margins, if they really blow it out, then that tells you something. If it's narrower than we thought, and New Jersey, they don't pick up New Jersey, they lose the VA, the Virginia Attorney General's race. That tells us something too. That gives a little bit of hope to Republicans.
Robert, the Democrats did not take the correct lessons from their losses in these places 4 years ago. What if the expected happens? What are the lessons for Republicans if this happens?
Sure. Difficult to say that they have to learn any lessons because Jessica said that she saw that Democrats would likely have a good night. That's different from good news. And I don't think it's good news for the Democrats. And it goes back to what Jessica was saying earlier, that the Democratic brand is really, to put it as nicely as possible, undefined. My colleague at the New York Times has said the Democrats can be lots of things, but they need to be something. And thus far, they're kind of a big fat nothing. And so that they eke out these victories by 2 to 3 or 4 points is hardly something to build a rallying cry from for that party.
But we can bet that they will overinterpret good news. If there is good news,
sure,
and they win in California by the kind of margin she's talking about, and they win in Virginia. So a problem is that if you don't get the right signals, you don't change.
Right.
The chances here that Democrats will say what we're doing is working and we've got to keep going. That's a real problem for them, right?
It's a real problem because, yes, it's the hard work of broadening your base, of learning your lessons is something that both parties have done everything in their power to avoid. And if this gives them an opportunity to avoid it and just say more of the same, they will do more of the same.
Okay, but for Republicans, they're not even going to pay attention to this, right, Bill? They're just going to say, what if this happens, they're going to say, doesn't count, who cares?
Yeah, well, unless they overperform.
Yeah.
If they win in New Jersey, then they too will overinterpret the results and say, we're gonna make this midterm a real thing, especially with redistricting. We may have a shot at the midterms next year.
Okay, the place I'm going to be looking, and I know you're going to look there too, is on the western border of New Jersey and all of those places with the kind of voters you're talking about. I looked in our poll numbers. I saw Trump's performance with Hispanic voters was poor on key issues. What are we going to learn from those places, Trenton, North and South?
I mean, do these voters come out? I think is the question. And then, are they motivated to switch from their 2024 vote? When you look at everything, it's not just the economy, it's the ICE raids and different things. So yeah, it's what kind of coalition comes out.
And we also get to see whether or not these dudes who came out and voted when a lot of Democratic-leaning women stayed home, whether or not those folks show up, right?
Yeah. I mean, it would be historic in either place. You're definitely going to have the first female governor in Virginia, Cheryl. And also, to me, it's also, Democrats are going to, if both of those women win, they're going to want to elevate them as the type of Democrats that can be successful instead of either going to, Republicans are going to want to point to Mondami.
I was going to say, well, Republicans are going around wearing Zoran Mondami T-shirts. The Democrats will say, but what about these ladies in these other places?
These were the candidates that helped them win back the House in 2018. They're going to point toward, look, their national security, their women, their moms, and different things. But is that enough to sort of excite the base, what we were talking about earlier, come 2026?
Well, you know where to watch to get the latest results because we're going to give them to you first. You know to watch here because it's going to be great. Panel, we thank you guys very much. And you all look really bright-eyed because daylight savings time, the tyranny of daylight savings time, has finally ended and we can feel like human beings in the morning again. Okay, coming up, an almanac that climbs right up my family tree. That's next. This is your almanac for today, Sunday, November 2nd, 2025. On this day in 1734, American hero Daniel Boone was born on the Pennsylvania frontier. Before his daring escapades in the Kentucky wilderness, Boone spent his young life becoming a skilled hunter and marksman. At the age of 20, he signed up for the French and Indian War, joining Major General Braddock's expedition to Fort Duquesne. It was there Boone met John Finley, a trader who would become a guiding force in Boone's exploration of the West. Nearly 15 years later, Finley told Boone of a gateway into the rich land beyond the forbidding Appalachians at what is now the junction of Virginia, Tennessee, and Kentucky, a wide pass in the mountains punched by a meteorite hundreds of millions of years before. Boone, Finley, and a troop of trailblazing frontiersmen set off for their first trip through the Cumberland Gap. Boone was commissioned by the Transylvania Company to clear a path through the gap into Kentucky. It was what came to be known as the Wilderness Road, along which some 300,000 American settlers would travel, fueling the nation's westward expansion and catapulting Kentucky toward statehood. So whatever treacherous path you're facing this week, remember what Uncle Daniel said: fear's the spice that makes it interesting to go ahead. Until next time.